Hashtag no music, no intro. Another episode of the Saints Block Party podcast. We are super excited by the guests we have joining us on this podcast episode. We have Coach Cody Alexander, the Art of X, MatchQuarters, just insanely high football intelligence and breaking down football concepts, like speaking Ryan's and I football love language. Or we say it in the past, like just football porn for just sickos like us. So we have Cody gracing us with his time, and just before we even dive into Saints, just curious. And I came across you on Twitter immediately. Became for our business became invested in a membership in terms of MatchQuarters. But like, what is Cody's story?
Yeah, so I first got my start coaching football at the University of Baylor. After I graduated, I had spent probably a year or 2 years coaching high school ball. I wanted to coach at the college level, so I quit my job. I got in on my own right. I had to take the GRE. Got into grad school at Baylor, sat in the office. Luckily, Phil Bennett, who was a defense coordinator there at the time, kind of was like, who's this guy that's always sitting and reading books? Because like I didn't have anything at the time because I literally was just sitting there, so I was just reading books. And so he started giving me stuff to do, and the next thing you know, I'm their GA. I was there for 3 years, and so I went. Perfect timing getting in, bad timing getting out. Philip Montgomery didn't take the Tulsa job until like a year later. Usually that's how that works. So I ended up going back to the high school level. And then I just started writing basically MatchQuarters in 2016. I had a lot of free time. I coached one of my good friends, head coach I was working for, got fired. I didn't want to move, so we were going to stay. I was going to have a lot of free time. And so I just started writing, and then this thing has really grown and it's now my full-time job. So I really enjoy doing it. And just, this is what I love. I love teaching football, and I'm a nerd about football, and especially on the defensive side. So that's, in a short version, that's kind of the story and how it started. And now it's grown into this big thing that now I do it full-time.
Yeah, man. I was checking out your YouTube channel, and it's like some good high-level football stuff. Like, people really need to go check out MatchQuarters on YouTube. It's amazing.
Please.
So how have you grown your content? Like, we as content creators ourselves, we're still kind of young in the game. We've been doing a podcast about 4 years now. We really just started kind of pushing the YouTube thing for about 8 months now. Yeah. So how has that experience been for you? Like, what have you learned from it? What have you enjoyed from it so far?
Yeah, I got really lucky and got some really good advice from like Chris B. Brown, who wrote Smart Football. Yeah. The writing is what started everything for me. And then I was like, well, why don't I just start doing clinics? I'm basically doing, it's the same thing that you would do sitting with kids doing coaching and like on Huddle with the telestrator and stuff. And so like, I've just kind of grown that part. The YouTube part for me, it's never been a big part of what I do. I've kind of had everything housed on one side, and I've kind of kept everything at MatchQuarters. And so it's kind of, I basically built the brand like that, kind of in a one-stop shop. And that's why when I moved over to Substack during COVID, it kind of built up, and they came to me really around Thanksgiving, was like, what if you just had everything on Substack? And so that's what I've been able to do. But it's just completely organic. That's the big thing to me when I talk to people in this space too, is like, don't do the gimmicky stuff, because that's just fat, right? Like those people that you get aren't going to stick around. They're there for the sugar, right? They're there for the fat. Like so just, build slow, and the following that you get is going to be a loyal following. And luckily I've been doing this since 2016. I haven't been able to do it full time until January, really. And so, it was kind of like I was essentially doing it part-time. I was teaching and coaching. In the state of Texas, you have to teach in order to coach. So my full-time job was teaching, and it just got to the point where I was like, I want to do this full-time. It was starting to bleed into the classroom, and I wanted to give those kids the respect of like not having I don't want to ever be like the 80s coach in the 80s movie of just like turning a video on and be like, hey, leave me alone. Like, I actually like my interactions with the kids, and I enjoy doing it. So like, that's kind of my advice to people that are getting into it and then want to grow is like, there is no secret sauce. Like there is no such thing as a overnight success. Is even the people that have a head start, they still have to produce over a long period of time. Like if you want consistency is key, find your groove. Like one big thing for me is like this year I made the decision to do more like video content because that's just kind of where I get more return on investment doing that than I do necessarily the writing piece. But I'm still going to do the writing piece because I know that's what the base wants. But also like I enjoy it. So like doing kind of like the hybrid mix has been something for me that I've started doing recently.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Ryan and I this past season that just ended for the Saints really made a dedication to doing video episodes and things like that. And it's been a slow build and things like that. And then there's still things that we're learning, and we're not people that market well. Like it doesn't come naturally to us. But it's just part of doing this where it's part of it. Like you have to have some type of functionality in that realm to do it, or else it's just never going to work. But let's talk about football, and let's talk about the Saints, particularly their defense. It's obviously ran by Dennis Allen, who's been the head coach going into his third season. He's been the DC there since 2017, I think, is when he took over, maybe 2016. And I think, in our opinion, and Ryan's and our opinion, like the Saints defense has been good and at times very, very good. Maybe these last two seasons, we've seen some dents in them defensively. But just, you really prepared before doing this pod, and, we had it scheduled earlier. We pushed it back to give you more time to really dig into the Saints defense. Just generally, what were your kind of takeaways when you were preparing to come on?
Yeah, so if you were just to say, what is it, like camp rules, day one install, what are we doing? And it's going to be the 4-3. And it's just 4-3, cover 3 is going to be your base defense. I think that they have a little bit of a mix of a Tampa 2. I think what we're seeing just in the NFL, just in general, now there's a few holdouts, but we are seeing a pivot to more quarters coverages. So you are seeing actually true quarters clips in a lot of these films where 5 years ago, there was only like a group of coaches running quarters. Everybody now kind of has some sort of quarters package within it. It is single high dominant. It's gonna be a cover one. They want to run cover 1 and they want to run cover 3. Now, I think the difference is, and so this is the difference between the college level and the NFL level, is that at the college level, you're going to get match cover 3, meaning there are going to be times where it is going to look like cover 1. I think at the NFL level, what you get is, why don't we just run cover 1? And then we have a cover 1 toolbox, and then we're going to be more or less spot drop cover 3, or kind of a zone match cover 3, where we're going to get to a spot and then maybe we'll relate to a player. It's not necessarily all vision. I think that's where the camps are in cover 3. They do run Tampa drops, which really, to me, Tampa is a whiteboard coverage, much like cover 3. Essentially, you have X's on a board and you just kind of move people around. And so what we've seen now is kind of that evolution of the Tampa scheme into what are called non-traditional Tampas. So it's not the mic always running through the pole. You change your triangles. Tampa is really 3 triangles. And so you build your 3 triangles in different ways. That's really what they want to run. They've added a little bit more quarters in, and really they're not really into what I call the targeted coverage movement, which is like your quarter, half world, or half quarter, kind of the Fangio-esque stuff that we are starting to see a lot more teams do, because Fangio really doesn't run quarters. That's a misnomer. A lot of people think he runs quarters. He really doesn't. He runs quarter, half. He just does it different ways. And so to me, when you pop on the tape of the Saints, you're going to get a 4-3. They're going to, now, even when they run their nickel stuff, it's a 4-2 with a nickel. It's still 4-3 run fits. It's all the stuff that was real popular at the college level, like about 10 years ago. It's all that stuff, and it fits really nice into what they're doing. But yeah, they want to play cover 3. They want to play a lot of cover 1 at volume. They're going to be one of the highest teams rates in cover 1. So that's kind of when you turn it on, that's what you're going to get.
And in regards to the quarters coverage, what does that? Maybe you could elaborate on quarters coverage a little bit for people that are watching.
Yeah.
What does that do to opposing defenses, and what does that bring to the table as far as defending modern day offenses?
Yeah, and this is another thing that's different about the NFL. The hashes at the NFL level make it a completely different game. So when you're watching on, for instance, if you're watching LSU on a Saturday, it's a different game than when you watch the Saints on Sunday. And the reason why is it's the hashes. The hashes are tight. It's essentially like it's an offensive coordinator's dream. I mean, you line up in the middle of the field every single time. There is no boundary. There is no. There kind of is a boundary, but not really. That's why it's funny. Like the draft is right now. People talk about they throw around the word boundary corner. All that really means is who's your dude? Who's your number one? Who do you put to the single X receiver, or who you have following the best receiver? So quarters actually in the NFL is for pass defense. Whereas at the lower levels, at the college and the high school level, you run quarters for quarterback run game, because it equals out your defense, and now you can leverage the quarterback on all the zone reads and all the different concepts that we typically see with the Eagles or even the Bills. You will see a lot of quarters against those teams. Like the Eagles had the largest cover zero rate this year in the NFL per PFF. And I would go, if you really go and watch all that's just 9-man spacing quarters. It's just man match quarters. I got that dude in front of me. We might have an overhang underneath as a wall defender, but we're playing essentially blitz coverage. And so that's where the quarters part comes in. Quarters is really just cover four, and you section out the field into 4 different spots. But quarters is very tag heavy, and you have to have a lot of answers because of the way that it's structured as, kind of this quasi blitz coverage. How do you play it? And there's so many different variations, which is why a lot of people steer clear of the quarters universe, though we are seeing it more and more because you can stack vertical routes. And that to me is where it works in the NFL, is that we're going to stack vertical routes and be able to play with our pass defenders underneath.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see this evolution, and especially defensively for the league as a whole, right? And I think just a general question I would love to ask you, not so much Saints related, is just from what you've seen, that you watch tape like no one else does. What would you attribute to the offense in the NFL and the totality being down last season?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a book back in 2018 called Hybrids, The Making of the Modern Defense, and it talks about the cyclical nature of the NFL and really just football in general. So we have gone through these different spurts really since the forward pass was invented. The forward pass gets really popular, right? Because defenses load up the box, they want to run. So what does it do? It opens up lanes down the field.
Right.
Then the defense adjusts. Offenses get heavy again. We get into a run game. Defenses adjust by putting bigger bodies on. Offenses adjust by putting smaller bodies on. And then so on and so forth. The only thing that's different, for instance, Tampa 2 has had kind of this rebirth within the last couple of years. People have always run Tampa 2, but at the kind of people have started doing it more and more and more. And they've done it in these non-traditional senses where we're going to give you single high, but then we're going to pop back to a Tampa 2. So it's non-traditional. It doesn't look like that. Offense has gotten complicated. So, to your point is defenses have now kind of, even in the NFL is a little different, but the defenses have adjusted to tempo. So the speed up stuff, defenses have adjusted to the use of motion. They are running more. They've kind of realized that passing is more efficient than running. So if I defend the pass and I cap verticals and I make sure I don't give up any fatals, the likelihood of you just running 3 yards in a cloud of dust, not going to happen, right? In fact, you will get fired as the offensive coordinator if you run the ball 10 times in a row and it's not the end of the game. Like growing up in the 90s, I grew up in Kansas City, so Marty ball of 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Like, this is like the most boring football ever. And like every game's like 13 to 10.
It won games though.
Yeah, no. So it won games then. It won games then because everything was packed in tight, and it was just they had just an unbelievable offensive line. They always had a really good running back, right? And so now we know like a 5-yard, and this is how I always relate to people. And a 5-yard run is a 5-yard run. But a 5-yard pass can be a 5-yard hitch. It could be a 5-yard hitch that turns into a 50-yard touchdown, right? It can be a screen that goes for a touch, right? So it's more efficient to actually throw the ball in the game. Right. And so what defenses have done, and especially going from a too high shell, is saying that even if we're going to play cover 3, we're going to play it from depth, and we're just not going to allow you to have guys just run by us. We're going to cut off these deep crossing routes by playing with depth. We're not just running country cover 3 anymore, like you learned back in junior high, right? Where the linebackers are your hook players. You got seam, curl, drop. No, we're going to move guys around, and we're going to make sure that wherever your most dangerous receiver is, we have a cutoff valve somewhere. So to your point with the evolution of defense is that the spread is won. The spread really won in 2018. If you go back and you look at coverage data in 2018, everything looks relatively normal. 2018 hits and people freak out. There's RPOs. Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, running a bunch of RPOs. So you start seeing this. 2018 was when Kansas City, the Chiefs and the Rams played that famous basketball game in Arrowhead. Right. And the Rams
scored over 100 points.
Right. Yeah. Like everybody's freaking out. Like when did the Big 12 become the NFL? And so 2019, you actually see the easiest answer for RPOs is to play man coverage. You just play cover 1. And so in 2019, you see like everybody just start running cover 1 and then just getting murdered with it. Right. And so starting in 2020, Fangio hits. So Fangio and Staley both hit, and they're like at 80 to 85% too high the entire time. Now, that doesn't mean they're running quarters. It doesn't mean they're running cover 2. They're just doing everything from a too high shell, and it was giving people fits. And so you go back to even the Patriots when they played the Rams and they were using that 6-man front. They were playing with 2 safeties in the back and leveraging crossing routes from depth, and it just got people turning. So you fast forward to where we are now, and what are we getting again? Offenses are now starting to put 12 personnel out there. We want to play with hybrid players. The fullback is coming back, 21 personnel. And so why do offenses do that? If I can get you in base, I've got bigger bodies. I'm looking for hybrid players, right? So even my H-back or my off tight end is going to be a better receiver than probably one of your linebackers is a pass defender. And that's where we are. So the spread is going nowhere. We're just getting a different iteration of heavy sets. 12 is the new 21 and all of that.
It's funny because I remember the Saints and the Patriots did this with 13 personnel, right? A couple of years ago, where it became very in vogue when you had, it was like, I'm going to forget one, but it was Gronk, it was Aaron Hernandez, and there was another Patriots tight end, and like they were just in 13 personnel, and ran so much from that. But it's funny you brought up that Rams Chiefs game, because Ryan famously tweeted like after that game, he said like defensive coordinators had like this secret meeting, like a convention.
We
and it was just like this. enough. And
it was like a nexus point in the NFL, like. We can't have this, because I remember everybody was like, well, defenses are done. Like defense in the NFL is over, because if the Chiefs were going crazy that year, the Rams, the Saints, 2018 were going crazy. It was like defenses were broken. Now we're like, what's wrong with offense? And it's so funny because we're having this discussion on our Discord where it seems like defenses are begging some offense to be like, run the ball.
Yeah.
Run the hell out the ball.
At us, please.
Yes. Please. But it's like nobody's really doing it. I mean, maybe the Ravens, but it's like nobody is really taking advantage of that. And I was just we were trying to figure out why. Like, is it a reason, or have defenses kind of figured out a way, even with the way they're playing with the quarters coverage and the too high, figured out a way just to keep the running game down a little bit. But then you got to include that the quarterback is now part of the run game too for most teams now.
Yeah.
So I really don't know how you slice it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to an NFL coach this offseason, and I mean, they said like, and you would never hear this uttered publicly, and you would never hear this. Any defensive coordinator at the college and high school level would be pulling their hair out. But they're like, look, if you get a 5-yard run on first down, it's 2nd and 5. You're throwing the ball.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine with it. As long as like you're not within the shot zone, which is like the 40 to the 40. Because like now, the big thing now is like with fourth downs, when you get inside the 40s, that's a 4-down territory pretty much. So a 2nd and 5 is really a 1st and 5. That changes the game a little bit. But like on normal downs in a normal position, you get a 5-yard. Like if it's P and 10, right? Possession and 10, it's the first time it's you got the ball. You just got the ball. We kicked it off to you. You got it. We punted it, whatever. You get it. You get it's first down. You gain 5 yards on first down. Okay, it's 2nd and 5. I know you're throwing the ball. Like you're not going to sit there and run the ball again and we're going to be able to do different things to you. Yeah, to me, that's because of the analytics part of this, because I know it's a dirty word a lot of times, but really the analytics has changed the game in the sense that it's a passing game. And I think we all know it's a quarterback driven game. Right. And so if you don't have a quarterback that can actually throw the ball or produce around, everything and throw the ball accurately, you're going to really struggle. That's why we're seeing, that's why we argue every single year about quarterbacks in the draft is because, you want to get a guy that you can hit. And then because of the way the cap is, you want a rookie quarterback on his contract. So, I mean, to me, that's where the game is. And like, to your point with about they do want you to run the ball because they know that running the ball is going to kill the clock. You're going to get frustrated. We're probably going to get a tackle for loss at some point. There's very few times, like I felt like the Cowboys this year against the Cardinals, it was just like, okay, you got to change it up. We got to do something else. But like you're talking about one game in it's 18 game season, 18, where it's like, we'll be okay. Like, we'll survive the next down or we'll survive the next series.
It's fascinating to me because now you have a coach in Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL, and he historically, like, he doesn't care about style points. Like his teams are built on in the trenches, defensive, offensive line of the ball, and if he has to run a ball 30 times, whatever, to win a game, like that's what it'll do. So that kind of coming back to the NFL, and I think we see it to a degree. Like as great as Patrick Mahomes has been his career, for the most part, Andy Reid has actually gotten better with Kansas City than he did with the Eagles, because that was always criticism with him, the Eagles, that he didn't run the ball enough.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's completely kind of changed that mindset about himself, and he runs a lot and he takes a lot of pressure off of Patrick Mahomes with the running backs he's had. A question I had, and I don't know if it kind of came to me before you came on, I told Ryan it would be a great question to ask before we get into like the minutia of the Saints defense, is were you able kind of just to generally get a sense of like what offensive schemes or what type of offenses the Saints went up against that kind of gave them the most fits?
Yeah, I thought one of the things to look at would be like their game against the Rams, where
please talk about it.
Because even I thought they really just were like, we're not going to play. We're gonna play a lot of man coverage on really crucial downs. Like I thought that was kind of, they would run the cover 3 stuff, but it was like every time that they needed to stop, they'd run cover 1, and the Rams just kill cover 1. I mean, they just do. And they got the Rams too with Kupp and Nakua, and they were kind of rolling. And so that game to me was one of those where it was kind of like, man, try something else. Like there was something where it was like, because what I thought was really interesting, like they had some of their. Go ahead.
I was at that game too. Like it was a big game for like our podcast. We had so many LA West Coast people come in, and we were like 25 deep, 30 deep in that game. And so it is just cinched in my memory.
Yeah, well, what I thought was really interesting is they ran like their second lowest cover 2 rate all year against them, and I thought that they needed
interesting.
Yeah, it was more. It was very much a match game. They were trying to play a lot of match coverage. They were trying to play a lot of what kind of basically match just means man with zone principles, right? And they were trying to really match up with them. And I felt like they really struggled in that game to really gain any kind of stranglehold on third down and get the ball back, because that game was really back and forth. They had an opportunity to win that game. That game to me was a little bit of a weird game, just in the sense that it was like, okay, I thought maybe you could do a little bit more coverage diversity, whereas they didn't run as much man as they, their average would be. They ran, I think PFF had them at 27%, still relatively high, but their cover 3% was like 37%. And that's really high for them. That was about almost, 14 percentage points higher than their average.
Our bodies come in different shapes and sizes, so doesn't it make sense that our weight loss plans should too? That's the beauty of Noom. They build a personal plan that factors in dietary restrictions, medical issues, and other personal needs so your plan works for you. Noom doesn't restrict or shame when you want to treat yourself. Their flexible program focuses on progress instead of perfection. You don't have to give up carbs or anything. And with their daily lessons, you can learn something new about your food choices every day. After just a few days of using the app, I learned how to recognize cues for overeating and how to choose the right foods to feel full. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. And check out Noom's first ever cookbook, The Noom Kitchen, for 100 healthy and delicious recipes to promote better living. Available to buy now wherever books are sold.
One thing a lot of Saints fans look at as far as kind of a weakness in the Saints defense is when they go against mobile quarterbacks, quarterbacks who can move. And on one level, I guess kind of everybody struggles with mobile quarterbacks. Like, that's why people want mobile quarterbacks. But is it something stylistically or schematically that the Saints do that make them susceptible to like a mobile quarterback that can really move?
Well, it's the single high dominance. So basically, your quarterback player is in the middle of the field, and he's deep. Saints don't really do a lot of cheat tags with their post safety, meaning that they don't keep him low. Where you can kind of do some different things. Where we're gonna instead of having him pedal straight to the post, we're gonna just kind of keep him in the high hole. He's basically playing flat foot. He's kind of a cut defender from high. You see. They more or less run your traditional cover one toolbox. They run with the linebacker as the spy or the rat. They run with the strong safety or the weak safety as kind of the cutoff valve. They do run some fire zone stuff with the like true cover one rat is what it's referred to as, where the defensive end becomes, but they're a 4-down front. They really don't want those defensive ends dropping. They're very much in line with what the Jets are doing, 49ers, the Texans. Like, we are a 4-down front. We don't want our defensive ends going. I think the Raiders are another good example of like, we're just not going to drop a guy down. And yeah, I put together a couple of these videos, kind of clips. They are a cover one team. There are ways to kind of mitigate this, but once you kind of go into it, so one cross is essentially we're going to send the backside safety. So if I have a lot of crossing routes and it's coming from the passing strength, that's where we're going to see the backside safety as his cutoff valve, right? So he's going to drop down and he's going to look for any kind of crossing route, and he's playing vision. What's nice about this, and what I think is interesting, is that sometimes these guys can really turn into extra run fit defenders. And you saw this sometimes with the Saints. But it's kind of when you are having traditional run game, right? Quarterback run game, that it's still difficult for that guy to fit in properly. He's going to play pass first mentality. And so that's kind of where that comes from. Gotcha. And two, they don't necessarily trade off with the cross tag. So once they're more or less true vision zone defenders. And so sometimes if the rush doesn't get there, the quarterback can hold the ball, or if it's a scrambling quarterback, it's a running quarterback, they can move around. And then now what looked like it was cut off is now not. So this is lurk. Lurk just means linebacker low, right? So we have cross, which is weak, which is the safety. We have lurk, which is low. So you're going to get the basically he's going to spy. He's going to get in front of the crossing route. And then the another one that you have is one Holt. This one is really popular against teams that like to flood the strong side. So we're going to have the strong side safety drop down, and he's going to now be able to, like, any digs from the front side. Maybe you like to run digs on the back side. You're running, like, here, this is a layered dig. You have a high dig and a low dig, and you want to hit that low dig. That gives you the opportunity to have a guy in the middle. And you can see there he's not really relating to anybody. He's true vision player off of that. Yeah. And that, to me, is the difference. This is kind of an old school way of running things. It's not going to be match heavy. Like I said, if they want to run match coverages and stuff like that, they're just going to go ahead and play man coverage, and that's what they're playing. They want vision droppers. They're trying to get guys in the quarterback's vision. You have real toolsy safeties, right? Matthew especially is real toolsy. He can do a lot of different things. May is pretty good too. Before he got hurt is another good one that you have guys that can kind of like play down near the box and do some different things and are used to doing that. And so to me, that's where that cover one piece comes in. But yeah, the Rams game, it just was like, look, it's not working. And I'll say this, like in defense of the coaching staff, the NFL is such a curated game plan week to week that and you don't have time to rep everything. Right. So you go into a game and you're like, we've only worked this. And you're like, well, these guys are professionals. They should be able to work what they did in this sense. The talent differential at the NFL is razor thin. So if you are doubtful at all about something, probably don't want to run it. And that typically tends to happen.
No, that's a good point, especially on that Rams game. It was a Thursday night game.
Yep.
And I already knew, I was like, man, preparing for McVay is tough enough. Like, McVay's offense is tough. On a short week,
and so that, to me, that makes more sense. They just played base, right? They said, look, we're going to play cover one. We're going to play cover three. That's what we're going to do. We got into the game. We thought we could handle them, and it just didn't work out.
I think, so to that point, and I think as a fan, right, because at the end of the day, we're fans, if you see that what your game plan is coming in was not working, like at some point you have to pivot from that game plan, right?
Yes.
Like that's the kind of definition of kind of insanity of just continuing to try, like, it's going to work at some point.
I will say that too is a thing with the NFL. I think that frustrates a lot of people is that it very much seems like there are, and two, halftime adjustments are it's really a mythical thing. It's like a unicorn. There really aren't halftime adjustments. The halftime at the NFL, like, you literally go in, those guys go in, they go to the bathroom, they get a snack, and then they come back out. Like, it's that as it is. So what happens a lot of times is you do have these tools, but you have to be able to, hey, can we do this? And I think that's where the better teams come in. And the Saints do have some young guys in the secondary. Yes, they do have older guys that are more established. But I think the teams that, I think even like the Browns have such a good secondary, but they got caught against the Texans of just being really vanilla, and so it happens. And I think on the offensive side, part of that is the defense comes out in a personnel you didn't expect them to come into. Maybe you thought they would come out in nickel. They come out in base. Now your whole run game's gone in that package because you thought they were going to be lighter. So now you have to pivot to the pass, but you didn't you didn't rep as many passing stuff. And to me, the biggest thing that you have to understand as a fan, thinking as a coach, is it's all about trust. So if I don't trust this call to work, I'm not going to call it. And it's different when Nick Saban's out there pulling from the playbook and it's like, I haven't ran this in 10 years, but I want to run this. Right. Well, the talent differential at Alabama compared to most of the teams that they're playing is like huge. So it's like, if they do mess up, we'll be okay. Right. They'll be in the vicinity of where we're supposed to be. It won't be like a complete bust. But like in the NFL, like, you bust, like, it's game over. Like, it does. Even the 32nd quarterback in the league is going to still be able to throw every single throw on the menu. So it's just kind of, you've got to kind of understand that kind of when you look at it from a coaching lens. And sometimes you just have a bad game plan. It just happens.
One thing that I noticed, it's kind of been on my radar for a while, is the safety position and the devaluing of the safety. We saw just this past NFL free agency, a lot of safeties just get let go by the team. Good safeties just cut, let go. I don't think there's going to be a safety drafted in the first round, maybe not even the second round. Is that just a component of the way they're playing coverage now in the NFL, or is that just the way offenses are? They just don't. It's not that they don't value the safety, but they just don't want to dedicate so many resources to it anymore. I don't know what it is. What do you think?
It's kind of like what I found with defense really is it's all about your interior defensive line play and your corners. And what you're going to do really at corner and edge, especially, is it in defensive end outside linebacker hybrid, is that you are going to just draft those guys and as much as you possibly can. Yeah. And then you try and do your homework on the safety part, and the safeties and the linebackers really become more or less like, if you will get to your second contract with us if you are good. If you're not, then we're going to move on. If you become too expensive, we got to allocate this money somewhere else. And so we're going to go, we need that money to go to interior defensive line play. I think that if there's a storyline this offseason, it is interior defensive linemen getting paid. Right.
Paid.
Right.
Paid.
And so I when we talk about this, I remind people, like, look what happened to Brandon Staley. Look at that defense when he played with the Rams and he had Aaron Donald. And then when he had, look, they had two of the top edges in the NFL with Bosa and Mack. But if you don't have interior defensive line play, we can handle you with a guard or a center, then it doesn't matter. You're not extending anything. I don't have to allocate any different number for that. And so what ends up happening is it's a numbers game. Right. So I don't have to allocate any extra numbers. So protection schemes are going to be able. And so you're less efficient on that side, which makes your coverage even worse. And if I can run through the middle, I'm going to keep you honest. Remember, running is like those are your jabs, right? The passes are your haymakers. That's when he's not guarding himself right now. I'm going to take this huge, massive shot. I'm going for the knockout. Those are your passes, right? Whereas like running is like your jabs. You're making a move. I'm making you work. It's like, think of it like over time. Football's a game of attrition. So if I can keep the ball moving, your defense is going to be tired. By the time we get in the fourth quarter, your safeties aren't going to want to be it's the Derrick Henry rule, right? Go watch any defense have to play Derrick Henry, man. Those safeties at the end of the game are like, hell no, I'm not going down there. Right?
Like, nah, professional athletes.
Yeah, it's like, I'm good, bro. Like, I'll be okay. Like, well, I'll see you next week. Like, making business decisions. And I think like over time, that's what ends up happening. So in going back to the safety position, and it really is a reflection of the linebacker position. If you have a dude, you pay him. If you don't have a guy, or a guy's kind of getting, long in the tooth, he's getting a little older in the contract, or maybe, hey, I know I'm going to have to really pay him a lot. Right. I'm going to let him walk because I know that I can find another guy, right? I can get a serviceable guy behind them. And I think that to me is where we are in the NFL because of the price of the quarterback tag. It has made everybody look a little differently at the way that they position themselves salary cap wise. Because it's such a balloon within your salary cap that you really have to really start figuring out where you want to allocate that dollar. And it's just not going to go to safety. It's going to go to corner and interior defensive line play.
It's all super important, and it's fascinating. And we don't know what's going to happen. Just the thought and the talks that at some point in this offseason, the Saints were wanting to trade Marshawn Lattimore, or we're contemplating it because of how important that position is. It just boggled our mind. Like, it just boggled our mind completely. I want to kind of go back to the analogy you made of the running game being like body blows and jabs. Yeah. That is something that the last 2-3 seasons, the Saints have not even been able to have like a hangnail to opponents with their run game. Like, it has been such a huge area of just almost nothingness. Some of that is, probably a lot to offensive line play. Even last year, with Kamara, he was finally probably as healthy as he's been in a while, and still nothing was really happening in the run game. Didn't get anything from Jamal Williams. And so just that component of not being able to just even keep defenses honest with the run game kind of just like makes you as an offense, it just makes them so one dimensional and so kind of like, all right, we know what's coming. Like we know they can't run. So it's such a huge thing that we want to see the Saints be able to, fix this off season. And we don't know what's going to happen with Clint Kubiak, him being the offensive coordinator, what that's going to look like under him, if it's going to go to more zone blocking or what have you. But it's it's vital, long-term for offensive success.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it kind of goes back to the whole point of defense. Modern defense is like, look, I'm going to make you run the ball. And if you can't run the ball, then it's just even better for me. Because now I can go lighter. I can put more athletes on the field. I can get, create different ways to double your best receiver. And now I've made you left-handed.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
It is.
So I don't want to lose the work you put into like the clips you made. Something that I think maybe the misnomer is I think a general fan or maybe even general Saints fans think that Dennis Allen blitzes a lot, which actually he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so you kind of put together 3 blitz designs that I'm gonna share, so people can see when he does blitz kind of, and as Saints fans, we know that the Saints probably have to blitz more often than they probably want to because the pass rush, we just talked about pass rush.
Yeah.
They drafted some who have not worked out. Marcus Davenport, Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey. Those are just players that you would think that could provide you some type of production. They've gotten, little to none from them. So you put a great thing together in regards to the blitz designs. And so if you just walk us through. So this was against the Packers this season.
Yeah, so against the Packers, they wanted to blitz the nickel, and that was a big part of what they did. And so you can see here, like they get in an odd front. This is obviously like a passing down one. They're going to get in an odd front with a 505. They're going to mug the linebacker. So what they're creating is a 5-man front. And then what they're going to drop guys out, and they're going to send the nickel off the edge. And because the width of the defensive end, he's going to collect this tackle. The running back in the protection is going to be in charge of a linebacker. And so because he steps up to the linebacker, it leaves the nickel outside. And so these are kind of the pressures that you see them using. It's like if we are going to blitz on a passing down, it's going to be kind of curated, and it's going to go after what we think we can hit home. And so that to me is what this is. And there's a whole bunch of different things that you can build off of this system. You can see too here that they're basically just running fire zone coverage. So it's 3 under 3 deep. And you can see that immediate pressure in the face of the quarterback, he's going to bail. And so now we've kind of changed the math in that way.
Yeah.
Also, still insane that they lost this game.
Yeah, I know. You watched it, and it's like it was. I feel like that was kind of the thing with the Saints. Is like they're right there. It's one of those teams that it's fresh. I can imagine being a fan. Like they're fresh. It's like I feel like they're right there. In almost every game.
Getting back to the Rams thing, right? We were just talking about this of like it's not working. Why don't you change it up? This game is such a perfect example of that because in the second half, Romeo Doubs of the Packers started going off against Isaac Yadam, who was a very underrated player and played great last season and very unexpected. And we as fans were just like, why don't you put Marshawn on the only player offensively that's causing you problems? Just yeah. So maybe it's just one of those things where it's you said the trust or what have you, but that was just very frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
So that was a great blitz design that's.
Oh yeah. I know. I remember that play specifically, and Alontae Taylor is a really physical cornerback.
He's really good.
Yeah, yes, I enjoyed that.
So this is when they're up. This is 1st and 10 in the first quarter. Packers have the ball on the 41-yard line.
Yeah, and so I think we're going to get another nickel pressure, and this is classic nickel 5-man pressure stuff. You're going to get the 3 technique on the back. He's going to wrap around. So on the bottom, he's going to wrap around once he feels a slide. This is just a conversion. This is what you call a natural. So you can see him wrapping back around. So if this is a run, it's really nice because it gives you edge pressure. We're probably moving the same way as the back. It's probably going to be some sort of a zone scheme. So it's called a feed motion. We're feeding the O-line. But that's the look.
Jordan Love looking like, man, what is –
Yeah. And so to me, this is like they will do some stuff like this. Like this is the classic 4-down stuff that you're going to see. They'll hit. There's other shots of them like they'll blitz the B gap in the run game, and then you'll get a few things. They are just not like this. Isn't Wink Martindale? This isn't going to be super exotic on some of these later downs where we've got like. Or even like Flores where there's a million people. This is a good nickel simulated pressure. I wanted to put these in because other than linebacker plugs, which is basically just a linebacker running to his gap, they got the nickel involved when they wanted to get exotic about anything. And that's why I put these nickel pressures in here is because I wanted you guys to see like what does the blitz package? Because when I think blitz, I'm thinking like, okay, presentation, we're going to get something crazy. You know, I throw up like a will linebacker running through the B gap. Y'all are going to be like, oh, that's it. But to me, though, what's funny about that, though, is like that's the classic NFL 3rd down blitz is to send the weak side linebacker and drop into like a cover 3 look. The whip, it's called a whip.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, so it's like everybody does it. This is a pretty good one. I wanted to show like they will get in the odd front, they'll pack it up, and then this is a simulated pressure. So simulated pressure just means that they've got a bunch of guys on the line. They are going to blitz, but they're actually only going to rush 4 guys. So it's simulating a pressure, which is 5 or more, but we're only going to really rush 4. And so you can see here.
So 1, 2, 3,
yeah. And
4.
24 is really in charge of the running back. So it ends up being a 5-man pressure. And then if he peels back, they know that we got zone. And so he can add in. Yeah, and so you'll get these, and like the double edge pressure stuff is pretty good, and there's different ways that you can run it. But this is another example of one, and I think I put this as so this is a good, like I said, this is their run pressure. They are going to send the weak side linebacker. They're going to get what I call a fit in the fold. They're going to create a natural cross dog. They're going to waste it. They're going to eliminate they're going to puncture the B gap. They're going to waste that lineman, and then they're going to sneak the backside backer in there, and he's going to collect the guy.
And just when you say cross dog, just for people,
dog, they're going to create an X, and dog just means blitz.
Boom.
Yeah, so you can see that they're going to get, if you were to draw this on paper, the will and the mic will look like a cross.
Right.
Yes, right.
Yep, so that's that. And they'll run this on the guard, which is what we see here. They'll run this on the center, which is kind of the old school way of doing it. This was a really good one that I thought when they got into 11 personnel stuff and it was heavy zone. This is a 5-man pressure where they're gonna float the center, meaning that they're gonna move that nose out to a 3. And then they're going to send the back. You can see the backer's already primed. They're going to cross the center's face. And so the fit creates a cross dog, but it's not a cross dog blitz. See how 20's free to fit wherever he goes.
Interesting. Let's watch that one back again.
And this is one of my favorite zone pressures. So you're going to see the nose who's in a 2-eye inside the guard. He's going to step to a 3. You're going to see 56 run through that gap that's created. And then 20 is really just reading the back. 20 should be working. 20 should be working, but because it's same side and he sees the pole, he's going to fit. He thinks that it's going to hit off the polar, and so he fits off the polar because that's actually where the extra gap is. So you can see him here. He's fitting off the polar, and the running back just ends up back inside.
Yeah, because Mario takes that away.
But if it's zone, if this is just pure zone and they don't gap scheme it, it will almost fit like a traditional cross dog fit. But Werner's actually he doesn't have any. He's called a ball fit essentially. Yeah. And I put this in because I think this is something that probably is a little newer. This is a 4-3, but they are going to find ways to get into a 5-man front. This was a big thing when I looked at them. And then they love running an under front out of this. And so Braun actually, he didn't re-sign with the Saints, but I think the reason why is because they like Sewell behind him. Sewell played a lot of what Braun did this year for the Ducks when he played at Oregon. And so all we have is an underfront, meaning that the 3 technique, who is typically set to the tight end, is actually set away. And so the B-gap bubble is actually to the strength. And the reason why you do this is because it's a harder block back for the center on any gap scheme. And then you've also plussed everybody, your linebackers, to the strong side. And so if you do get like a stretch play, you're already there to exit the box. Yeah.
So that's pretty effective against like those zone stretch plays.
Yes, wide zone. And the 5-man front stuff really shows up against teams that are trying to run wide zone. They're trying to run more. They're trying to run more heavier personnel, but they want to stay in their 4-3. And so you can see right here, the online tight end is always going to set. He's going to take precedent, and then the offline tight end. So the online tight end, the way that I think of it is that it's really a 2D player. He can go vertical and he can go out on a pass. Your H or your slot, the one that's off the ball, he's a 3D player. He can go across, he can go out, and he can also go vertical. And so that's why you typically won't set the strength there. You'll set it to the running tight end, which is typically the one that's on the ball. And so that's what we get here. Again, another look of kind of that underfront mentality. They did this a lot against the Jaguars. In fact, the Jaguars, they played this 5-man front against them a ton. And a lot of it is just to and 2, against a team like them that like to run counter, they like to run duo, which is really just power without a pole, which is very downhill. You're putting that B-gap bubble right there. And so while everybody's going down, you're kind of keeping your linebackers clean, and they can go and puncture. Everyone played a 5-1 against the Lions, and that's why I put this in there, because you're like, well, how can we get into some of this penny front stuff, that's what it's referred to as the 5-1 stuff. How can we get into this penny front stuff? Well, you have this is your nickel package, so you have. But all they did was they brought Braun on instead of Werner, and now you have your 4-2, and they just walk him up. And then later in the game, you can see Sewell play that position as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so everybody played them because they're a wide zone base, but they do run some gap scheme. And so playing that, this is where you do actually get that kind of that bear look from them too. But I wanted to put those 3 in just to show you that this is not just – they're trying different things. Yeah. They're evolving. Coverage-wise has probably stayed the same. But front structure-wise, they're trying to do different things to mitigate some of the things that these modern offenses are giving them.
Man, that's some good stuff. It just blows me away how much you have to account for playing defense. And it's not like, they got the rules. The rules already benefit the offense. But there's so many little things you have to account for. And it's all reactive,
Right.
Yes. And I guess what Dennis Allen tries to do is he wants the defense to more dictate what the offense does, but it's hard to do in this league, man. That is hard to do.
Yeah, and everybody now they've got into the quick motion. Most of the top offenses have some sort of either pre-snap motion or motion before the snap, which is just shifts before the snap. So messing with your coverages, messing with your front structures. When you play a 4 down, it gets pretty difficult. You have that open B-gap bubble. The problem is, well, why doesn't everybody run odd front? When you do that, now you give them the angles for gap scheme, and gap scheme and traps have kind of become a popular way. Right. Pin pull, the crack toss that the Dolphins kind of made famous this year with their speed backs, the wide zone. So all these things kind of feed into that cat and mouse game. I think it is, like you said, right now defensively, you have to be multiple. You cannot be in a camp. Right. You can't be. And I think we saw this with kind of in the playoffs play out. Real static defenses that really didn't do much. They didn't change much. They kind of got fetched a little bit. I think the 49ers were the outlier in that, but that's just because of the defensive talent that they had. Talent supersedes everything. Yes.
And then and
then he gets fired. And he gets fired. So, and that just goes to show you why it's so hard playing defense right now. and then kind of being able to how do you be multiple when you don't have that much time with these athletes? I don't think people understand, like, we're starting to see all the new head coaches. They're having their introductory meetings. They're meeting with players.
Right.
They're showing clips of them working out. The problem that, and probably most people don't realize about that, is that the clock starts the moment that those players enter that building. And so they can only be there for a very strict amount of time. It's in the CBA. So it's not, these guys don't have, it's not like the old school days where you could keep them in for 8 hours and you could have position meetings and you have a walkthrough and then you have another install meeting and another walkthrough. And then, hey, we're going to work out. And then, oh, hey, we're going to do this training session, or we're going to do, it doesn't work like that anymore. And I think that's where I think the NFL now is probably going to become a better product because of it, because you have to be a better teacher and you have to relate with your players and you have to be, because how else are you going to be multiple in what you do if you can't teach everything? You're limited. I tell coaches all the time, you're limited by your creativity. And then from that, your ability to then teach what you're doing that concise and in a manner that your players can understand.
That's man, this is just such a great conversation. I have one more, and we don't want to take too much of your time, and we don't know if you do, but it is draft season. We're 2 weeks away from the first round of NFL draft. We're having a draft party in New Orleans for all of our supporters and listeners who are patrons or what have you. Do you have just any general draft thoughts on any prospect, just anything for this draft class coming? I'm going to keep it very broad. You can go position, you can go player, just anything you potentially have for the draft.
Yeah, I think one name to understand is the interior defensive lineman from Illinois, the Newton kid. I think
that's Ryan's guy. That's Ryan's guy.
I'm a big Illinois fan, just in terms of what they are such an outlier on what they do. And then when they were really rolling defensively, basically got Ryan Walters the job at Purdue. But that to me, that their interior defensive line play, especially with him playing in, that's a name to keep an eye on. I like the kid, the interior guy from Texas as well.
Murphy.
Yes, Murphy. Here's the thing though about like the draft stuff is that a lot of it, especially at the high end, will be set off of where the quarterbacks go. How many quarterbacks? I think you're going to see a few of them. The guys are like, oh, I thought, like J.J. McCarthy, probably not going to go in the top 4. He may not. I don't necessarily think he will. If there's a hot take coming from that, that'll probably be that. I just think
not a hot take at all.
Not a hot take. No.
I'm just saying. I think that there's a lot of. I think this is lying season in the NFL, and everybody is doing that. I'm a huge fan of Quinyon Mitchell, the kid from Toledo. I think what he did at the collegiate level, even though it was at the MAC, it translates multiple different techniques. They played in a quarter scheme, so he was on ball, he was off ball, he had to do a lot of different things. He's a physical freak himself. And so those are kind of my guys that are favorite defensively. Those are my 2 guys to look forward to. And the draft, I try and stay away from the draft because it gets a little crazy, which I probably should, but it goes back to that, put sugar and fat. Like I'm gonna stay away from that. I'm gonna stay what I know, meat and potatoes. And
you grind enough tape, bro. Like you don't need to add the draft to it, man. My last one I got for you. Just a quick. The Saints a few years ago they had Marcus Williams at safety. He was like a true center field free safety.
Yeah.
Crazy range,
all that.
Yeah. Is that something we're going to see less of in the NFL? Like, just is the college game producing those guys that could just play deep and cover both sides of the fields with stupid range, take the ball away, stuff like that? Is the college game still producing those guys?
I don't think so. I think you do see teams with heavy cover 3 tendencies, but it's multiple. It's not the old school down safety cover 3. I think now more than ever, you got to have quarters tools built into your cover 3s. You're going to be moving your guys around. It's more of a left-right scheme. You got to know the whole defense. And so I just think guys that are kind of like not saying that he was, but like guys that are like one trick ponies that I am a center field safety, I am a box safety, I am a man corner. I think those guys struggle when they get into the modern NFL now because of how multiple it is. We're moving away from man coverage. Now, don't get me wrong, you're still going to play man, you're still going to play cover one. But in terms of just volume of calls, you're just seeing more and more zone. Zone has vision. You have to know where you are. You know how to have to relate. That's a thinking man's game. And if you can't, that's the biggest thing to me at the corner position that has changed in the past 5-10 years is you just cannot be an on-ball guy. I mean, even Trayvon Diggs with the Cowboys had to retool himself in the offseason and to be more of a zone defender. Now, the Cowboys and now the Commanders, they want to play cover one all the time, and Dan Quinn's kind of one of those guys. But their trap two stuff, and he's going to have to play more off ball. Those things that you saw, that evolution within that, good for him for doing that. But some of these guys, from the time that they're 13, they're on-ball corners. They go to their DB guru guy, and they're working press all the time. They go to college, they're 90% on-ball press all the time. You go to the NFL, and they're like, you can't press Tyreek Hill. You're going to get ran by, right? Even some of these other receivers, you're just not – that's not feasible on every single play to basically turn into a track meet. So I think, to me, guys like that, you're going to start seeing them kind of dwindle. They want multiple tool guys. I think that's where it is.
I think that's why a player like Brian Branch just screams that from last
great
season.
Example.
Right. Because and it's so anyway, he was there in the second round, he was their best rated player on their board, and they decided not to draft him. They decided draft for need and went with Bosky instead. But when you're talking about multiple, I think of Brian Branch, I think of Kyle Hamilton. It's still wild to me that Kyle Hamilton slipped to where he did in the draft, because what you're describing is exactly the prototype of what those players are. They can play they can play too high. They can play the slot. They can come in and play linebacker. They can play zone. And we saw the Lions benefit from it. We saw the Ravens defense. Kyle Hamilton was a all pro safety, right? Yeah. Because of the multiplicity of them. But I also think I use teams like the Cardinals as a perfect example. And Ryan and I have been on this train of the Cardinals go to the complete other end of the spectrum with Hassan Reddick and with Isaiah Simmons, where they draft these multiple players that can play multitude of positions, but then they don't develop them well, and then they kind of just struggle, and then they go on and potentially have a renaissance in their career.
No, I agree with you, and I think too, when you look at somebody that's good at multiple different things, they tend to not be that premium guy, right? Because you have to kind of visualize how they are going to go. But Branch is a great example. I was how did the Jalen Petrie for the Texans?
Oh yeah.
People were well, he just played in the slot at Baylor, and I'm yeah, but he was literally the best player on the field every time that he played. Why would you not put him there, right? And they're oh, I can't visualize, and it's I think that's where in the draft world you have to be able to project. Not necessarily project people from what they played on their film, but where can they fit? I'm not shocked that Jalen Petrie's been a good safety. Not shocked that Brian Branch was a day one install starter for the Lions and then produced.
Not at all.
and two, I think it comes down to where they're also coming from college and what they're being asked to do. If you come from Alabama, you're doing multiple different things. George is in the same boat as that. Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts, who was where Jalen Petrie was, they were asking multiple things in the secondary. They're not just a press, bracket scheme that we see a lot of times in the SEC and at the college level. So to me, I think you hit the nail on the head. Those kind of guys. But then relating back to that, those guys are not the guys that are going to be at the high, your top 10 picks. And so that's kind of why a guy like Kyle Hamilton, you're I don't know. Is he a linebacker? Is he safety? Yep, and you're dude, he's a football player. Play him.
It made no sense. It made no sense.
And so just use him. And so of course, he falls to an organization like the Ravens that are smarter than everybody else, and the rest is history, and that's how it works.
It is what it is. And the Saints had that guy in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He was that prospect at Florida, came in, day one starter. Day one starter, and he got traded because he had some, he just didn't agree with the way Dennis Allen was running things. So that seems to be a running trend in the Saints secondary players of not agreeing with DA.
Well, I think because it's very man heavy. It's very solo coverage heavy. So when you do get beat, like a lot of times you just don't have help. And I mean, I understand that. Like I played DB my entire life. Like I totally understand that. Like I'm DB coach. Like I get that. Like and that can be frustrating because it's like, can you give me a down where I'm not running a track meet? Can you give me a down where I can have a little bit of help? Like I can have a break, right? And so a lot of times that's probably where that stems from. Because when you do watch the tape, that I can see where DBs in the system are like, man, okay, here we go again.
Help
like
me.
strap up and see. Okay,
Interesting. Could you see that, like watching like the Saints defense in terms of just maybe from like the corner, like the I don't know, like the corner players or the secondary, kind of just.
I don't know body language wise, but I can see where I can see where that stems from. Is like a lot of times when you're in these man centric systems and you're not having success or you get beat. Like it's just, you can have problems. Maybe you don't want to necessarily always be the down safety. I don't want to necessarily always be the center field safety. Remember, these guys are thinking about their careers and, hey, this may not be my last spot. I need to be able to put things on tape. You never know what the outside ulterior motive is for things like that.
Well, it has been an honor and a pleasure, Cody. Just perfect. Like you're just perfect. Speaking, like I said, Ryan and I love language. It was just fantastic for us to just chat football with you, talk Saints, talk defense. It's been great. If you are watching or you're listening, please make sure that you check out MatchQuarters. You can follow Cody on Twitter, and it's at _coach_A. Again, that's at _coach _A, and then he's also on Instagram under MatchQuarters. If you're listening to the podcast, please, when you get a chance, check out the video on YouTube because you can actually see the video examples of what we're talking about. So it may be a little hard to visualize or conceptualize in your head, but we have the videos and we played those examples from Saints games, so you can actually see what we're talking about and the examples that Cody were given. It was amazing. Thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Please, if you're a listener, check out MatchQuarters. Subscribe. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Thanks,
and with
Cody.
that, we're out.
Peace.
Hey y'all, Darius Rucker here. A lot of people ask me, what inspires your music? And one of the big things is a strong sense of place. That's why I love my home state of South Carolina and want to share the awesome things it has to offer. From the beautiful mountains down to the sunny coast, it's got it all. Not to mention two of my personal favorites, great golf and amazing food. Come see why I love this place. Visit discoversouthcarolina.com.